Thank you to my patrons. Your generosity and commitment to my work is astonishing. I sincerely appreciate it.
The resurrection. You have to have more faith to believe it didn't occur than it did. And if God exists, and He does, and can create the universe out of nothing, then He can certainly resurrect Jesus from the dead. That's why we believe in Christianity.
Did you catch that? Did you actually hear him say that?
If you ever try to bullshit me like that again, I will rip off your arms.
Hey everybody, Magic Skeptic here, and don't worry, the video is about to begin. I just wanted to take a moment to make you aware of my Patreon, the link for which can be found in the description below. Sign up today for as little as £3 per month and you can gain access to a plethora of perks and extras, including downloadable audio-only and ad-free versions of my podcast that you can listen to on the go. You can also have your question answered in a monthly video, and better still, depending on which tier you choose, you could even sit down for a Skype call with yours truly, Magic Skeptic. All that is available and much, much more. All you got to do is click the link in the description below. I hope to see you there. Hey everybody, Magic Skeptic here, and you're all most welcome to another episode of The Most Annoying Religious People. Every single time I do that intro, I almost feel the anger of previous episodes return. I swear to God, or whatever God exists or none, I'm getting PTSD from doing this series. But you know, the show must go on, and you guys are loving it, and I'm loving it, and so it's all good. But I tell you, this stuff really does get you in a fury. I'm not even kidding. Maybe I've just got anger management issues. I don't know. Look, if you're a counselor or psychiatrist, hit me up below. Maybe I need some therapy. In any case, speaking of being annoyed, today's featured person is, you know, might actually be the most annoying, like at the very top of the pile. And I'm speaking, of course, about none other than Frank Turek. Frank Turek has made a career for himself out of Christian apologetics. Apologetics is the domain of discourse that deals with objections to the faith, and Frank Turek has spent his life doing this. And so, look, I don't want to attack the guy personally or anything, but I just have to say, I get very, very bad vibes from this guy. I do not get the sense, like some other featured guests on this, series of videos, unlike those other guests, I do actually get the sense that Frank Turek might be dishonest, and you'll see what I'm saying as soon as you see it in the video. He has been featured on my channel before. I featured him in an episode of A Magician's Thoughts where I looked through his Twitter thread. If you're interested in that video, I'll include the link in the description below. But in any case, I'm going to dive into another video of his today just to show you guys how frustrating he is. He has a habit of what I would call straw manning. A straw man, if you're not familiar, guys, is when you create a weak version of your opponent's argument and then knock it over like a straw man. And so the title is fitting. But Frank Turek has made a career out of creating straw men. He never actually deals with the real arguments of atheists such as myself. Instead, he creates straw men, knocks them over, and declares victory. But look, this probably gets to the core of the issue and why he's featured in this video. So without further ado, guys, I give you the very freaking annoying Frank Turek.
The reason that we believe Christianity is true is because the answer to 4 questions is yes.
No, it's because you were indoctrinated at birth, and it was reinforced and reinforced and reinforced, and as the old saying goes, the battle for the mind begins in the cradle, and they certainly won that battle against you, didn't they, Turek? The only thing you're missing is your pacifier.
How about the first question? Does truth exist? Obviously, you hear people say all the time, there is no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. When somebody says there is no truth, you ought to ask that person a question. You ought to say, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. In other words, it's a self-defeating claim. Of course there's truth. If there was no truth, an atheist couldn't be right that there was no God. So there is truth.
And right off the bat, we get a ridiculous straw man. So he's implying here, albeit he doesn't say it explicitly, but the implication is clear. He's suggesting that atheists believe that there's no such thing as truth. This is kind of like a critique of postmodernism, and I'm not going to get into that here because that's a whole other kettle of fish. All I'm going to say is that I'm not an atheist who thinks that there's no truth. I agree that there is such a thing as truth. If you boil it down, guys, what he's talking about here are the laws of logic, and there are 3 classical laws of logic. I promise you this isn't too complicated or anything. And, forgive me if you're already aware of this, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. But there are 3 laws of logic: the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle. Now, that sounds rather complicated. All they really refer to is that something is what it is, it isn't what it isn't, and it can't be neither or both. An example will help to explain. An apple is an apple, and it's not an apple, right? So something is either an apple or it's not an apple. And it can't be neither or both. So that's a true dichotomy. Everything in the universe is either an apple or not an apple. You can't be both an apple and a non-apple. And you can't be neither, because in that true dichotomy, you have to be one or the other, right? Now, you might say, oh, but an orange. What about an orange? Well, an orange is in the not apple category. Again, there's only 2. Now, again, this might be complicated or might seem unnecessarily kind of in depth for an initial and opening comment on what he's saying here, but that's essentially what he's describing. He's describing the fact that reality coheres to the laws of logic, right? In order for truth to exist, we assume the laws of logic. He is correct in saying that if somebody were to utter the statement, there is no truth, that they've uttered an incoherent statement. Because if they were correct, it would be true that there was no truth, and so it's self-defeating. Great. All you've established there is the laws of logic. Something is what it is, it isn't what it isn't, and it can't be neither or both. Fair enough. But please notice the implication in this entire diatribe of Turek's. He wants to ground this in God. He wants to say that the reason the laws of logic exist is that they're rooted in God. But that actually is incoherent for the same reason that he pointed out somebody who says that there's no truth is incoherent. Think about it. If there were no God, wouldn't it be true that there is no God? In which case the laws of logic still apply, and so too does the concept of truth. So Mr. Turek, I'm very sorry, but you do not get to ground the laws of logic in God's existence. You cannot do that. The laws of logic govern all things. They are built into the very fabric of reality. If there were no reality, and while there would be no minds around to think about this, if there were no gods, no reality, no nothing, if in fact there was nothing, right? It would be true that there was nothing, right? So the laws of logic would still apply. You do not get to ground these in God. So when you erect this logic, these rules of logic as arguments for God's existence, and when you pretend that truth is an argument for God's existence, you just shoot yourself in the foot, my friend. And that's quite ironic in a video that's titled 4 Reasons Why Christianity is True. So guys, I hope that wasn't too heady. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I tried my best to explain that. Perhaps this deserves a video of its own. If you'd like me to make a video about the laws of logic and truth, please comment below and let me know. But for now, let's proceed with the video.
Question number 2, does God exist? There are several arguments for the existence of God. Let me just give you one. Even atheists today are admitting that space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing.
Maybe some of them are, but I'm not, Frank. Sorry. The truth is that that's not a settled question. And if you look at what physicists are saying, if you look at what people like Sean Carroll are saying, you will see that this question is still an open one. The jury is still out on the question of an infinite past versus a finite past. So you can't just say that even atheists are now admitting that the universe had a beginning. That's, I'm sorry, bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. My answer to the question of origins is I don't know. And that is the only honest answer, Mr. Turek. But as I explained in the opening, honesty isn't exactly one of your characteristics, is it?
Well, think about this, friends. If space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? God.
Even if he was correct and there was a finite past where there was truly nothing and then something came from that nothing, I'm with him on some of these statements. So whatever caused that, if anything, it would have to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. It would have to exist outside of space and time to have caused space and time. But then he adds personal. Why would it be personal? That's a joke. And then he adds intelligent. Why would he add intelligence? It's entirely plausible, Mr. Turek, that whatever caused something to come from nothing was impersonal and unintelligent. It may very well have been a naturalistic process. Now, before anybody jumps at me in the comments below and says, oh, but naturalistic processes require time and space to exist, I'm not using naturalistic in the standard usage here, just to be clear. And all of our language breaks down when we talk about before space and time. Even the phrase before space and time is a temporal phrase, which makes the statement incoherent. If indeed there was nothingness that something came from, all of our intuitions break down, all of the logic, all of the words we would normally use break down. So please extend an olive branch here, dear listener, and forgive me if I trip over some words here. But whatever it is, if there was something that caused nothingness to become the universe, whatever that was doesn't necessarily have to be personal or intelligent. I would concede that it would be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, but I'm sorry, we're still not at God. And the other problem here is we've never had nothingness to experiment with, because by virtue of existing, we exist in a state of somethingness. For all we know, the laws of physics, which came into existence with somethingness, they clearly wouldn't apply. For all we know, cause and effect doesn't work the same way if indeed there is a vacuum of nothingness. And again, I can't even use the word vacuum there, can I? Because that assumes that there's a space. But if there's truly nothing, there is neither time nor space. So why would we assume that the rule of cause and effect, as it applies in our reality, would extend beyond the scope of that reality into a state of nothingness? Maybe, Mr. Turek, it's possible, despite our intuitions to the opposite, maybe it's possible that nothingness can become somethingness because the rule of cause and effect wouldn't apply. I've seen theists and I've seen Turek say this in the past. If something can come from nothing, well then, why don't things just pop into existence randomly all the time in our reality? Because this reality isn't nothingness, it's somethingness. And clearly, so long as you have something, and the rule of cause and effect applies, for there to be an effect, it needs to be preceded by a cause. But there is no reason to suppose that that rule would apply in a state of nothingness before time, space, and the laws of physics exist. Causality itself does not apply. So guys, I'm sorry, but this just doesn't work. This is rudimentary argument for God's existence stuff, and Turek is just continuing to say this stuff and assert it from on high on his pedestal, as though he's got all the answers, as though these arguments haven't been debunked thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times by philosophers much greater than me. So look, let's continue here, but just before we do, it must be acknowledged that this entire section of the video is predicated on the lie that atheists are now coming around to the idea that the universe had a finite beginning. I am an atheist. I do not agree with you, Mr. Turek. My answer, and the only honest answer, is I don't know. I think you should start being honest and admit that you don't know either. It doesn't matter what your little book of magic spells says. Come on over to the side of rationality and take a break. It must get tiring spouting fiction all day long. Let's continue.
Now, we don't know it's the Christian God at this point, but we know it's a theistic God, a being who's beyond the world, who created the world.
I would say you don't even know that it's a being. I think it was David Hume who used the scales analogy. If you've got a weight, right, just like a seesaw scales, but one side of it is obscured behind the curtain, all we know is that it's balanced, right? Let's imagine you have one brick sitting on this side and it's balanced. So we would assume that whatever is behind the curtain is the same weight as the brick. But we have no right to assume that the object behind the curtain is a singular entity. Maybe what's on the other side of the curtain, which is creating the balance with the brick on this side, is one single brick. But maybe it's a collection of smaller bricks that equals the weight of the brick on this side. Well, we are in the same position here in the universe. We see this universe, the effect that is this universe, and we can only hypothesize as to the cause, if indeed it had one. It's also entirely possible that the past is infinite. And no, I'm sorry, you don't get to say that's ridiculous if you're going to posit an infinite God to make up for it. So just get out of here with that special pleading nonsense. But yeah, the thing that's behind the curtain might be a singular God. We're looking at the cause that is, or the effect rather, that is the universe. And when we're reasoning or using our inferential abilities and reasoning to the best explanation via induction or abduction, you might say a singular God caused it, but you haven't ruled out polytheism, Frank. You haven't done that. Maybe there are many gods that created the universe, or maybe, just maybe, there was no God involved at all. At the end of the day, we're sitting on the side of the seesaw where we cannot see behind the curtain, and for you to assert that the Christian God is the thing behind the curtain is premature at best, but it's evidentially bankrupt and dishonest at worst. Let's continue.
The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if miracles are not possible. But the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and we have scientific evidence for it. What's that? I just mentioned it. The creation of the universe out of nothing.
Another assertion. The creation of the universe out of nothing. That has not been demonstrated, Mr. Turek. But look, I won't repeat my entire diatribe once again. Let's just steelman the proposition, something which you've never done, Turek. But I'm going to steelman your proposition. I'm just going to grant you, for the sake of discussion, that the universe does in fact have a beginning, and that it began out of nothing. Where does that get us? Why would you even label that as a miracle? You see, this is why I wonder about his integrity. I feel like he's equivocating on his use of the word miracle. Miracle, as far as I can understand it, is when something impossible happens, when something that shouldn't be possible occurs. To say that something out of nothing, or that the universe coming out of nothing is a miracle, assumes that you have the knowledge that such an event is impossible. But you don't have that knowledge, Mr. Turek. You don't have that knowledge at all. This is just all rooted in an assumption of yours, a presupposition. Labeling the universe coming into existence out of nothing as a miracle simply demonstrates your willingness to equivocate on the meaning of the term. It doesn't get us anywhere. He says this about the Big Bang as well. The Big Bang is the greatest miracle that's ever occurred. The Big Bang, while we don't know what caused it, if indeed it has a cause, there's no reason to suppose that it's a miracle. I think he's using the word miracle here synonymously with the word amazing. I grant you that the origin of the universe is amazing. The majesty of the universe just completely bewilders me. I mean, this is why I'm not religious. I don't need the burning bush. I don't need the resurrection. I don't need ghosts and ghouls and goblins to get my sense of awe. All I need to do is look into the night sky and look at the stars, some of which are so far away that the star from which that light is emanating has long since died, and all I'm seeing is a time machine that extends into the past. I mean, that just floors me. The majesty of reality is enough for me. I don't need your burning bush. I don't need Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and the flood. Get out of here. Right? If you want to equivocate on the meaning of the word miracle, fine, but I'm going to call you on it. I agree that reality is amazing. In fact, it's so amazing to me that I don't need a book of fairy tales to add to it. And that's the difference between you and I, Frank. You need the book. I don't. Reality is good enough for me. That's it.
If Genesis 1:1 is true, every other verse in the Bible is at least possible. Because if there's a being that can create the universe out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants inside the universe? If he can create the whole show out of nothing, of course. He can resurrect Jesus from the dead or walk on water or part the Red Sea. He can do any of that.
You know what? In a strange moment on this series of the most annoying religious people, I'm actually going to agree with Frank here. I grant you that, Frank. If indeed there is a being that is powerful enough to create the entire universe out of nothing, I grant you that he might be able to raise a guy from the dead. Fair enough. But this all lands on a massive if with a capital I. If there was a being that was powerful enough to do that, the rest of it might actually neatly follow. But you haven't demonstrated the if. Sorry.
So the final question, the fourth question, which gets us all the way to the Christian God is the New Testament reliable enough to show us that Jesus rose from the dead? The reason we believe in Christianity is because an event occurred, the resurrection. Now, I have to ask you this. Why would the Jewish writers of the New Testament, all were Jewish with the exception of Luke, why would they invent a resurrected Jesus?
Because they believed it. I'll just give you what you want, Frank, because they believed it. Let's just assume that's it, and that there's no other complicating or, aggravating factor here. I'm just going to assume that they believed it. Where does that get us? I don't care if they believed it, Frank. I don't care what people believe. I care about what they can demonstrate. I really don't give a shit. Sorry. Forgive my impoliteness, dear listener, but I don't care. You gotta bring more than testimony, Frank. You're talking about a guy coming back from the fucking dead. You're talking about resurrection. And your evidence is that these people really believed it? Why? Why would they invent it? No, I'll just grant you that they didn't invent it and that they were actually writing what they believed occurred at the time. And yet it gets us no farther. There are people alive today who will testify to the miracles that have been performed by Sati Sai Baba, an Indian miracle worker. Millions of people will testify to his miracles in 2022. They believe that he really did this stuff. Are you a convert? I don't care about testimony, Frank. If your evidence for the resurrection is testimony, well, then we might as well move on.
Why would they say that a man who claimed to be God rose from the dead if it didn't happen? They thought that would be blasphemy for a man to claim to be God. And why would they invent a resurrected Jesus? They already thought they were God's chosen people. They had no motive to invent a resurrected Jesus. And certainly they could not have invented it in Jerusalem, where an empty tomb existed. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the resurrection.
Edit. There would be no New Testament if the writers of said testament did not believe that the resurrection occurred. You see how he equivocates? He wants to suggest that because people merely believed that it occurred and henceforth wrote it down, that therefore it occurred. Do I even need to explain the fallaciousness of this? This is absolutely astonishingly stupid and incredibly annoying. Are you kidding me? What the actual fuck? Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, Frank, but your statement requires an amendment. There would be no New Testament if it weren't for the fact that those who wrote it down actually believed it. But them believing it does not confirm that the narrative is true. It does not serve as empirical evidence that a man died and came back from the dead 3 days later. That's the difference, Frank. Your epistemological standards are so low that people merely saying that something happened is enough for you to believe it. That is how you get conned. I can refer you to thousands of websites of people who will tell you that they are the risen Elvis Presley, or that they've seen the Loch Ness Monster, or that they were abducted by bloody aliens. All of those testimonies of people who were alive today, who you can go and sit down and interview in the flesh. You can't interview any of the New Testament writers. These testaments are based on hearsay and oral tradition. As Matt Dillahunty put it one time, the Bible is an assemblage of texts where there are copies of translations without any originals. And you're trusting the hearsay of these people. And I'm even granting you, for the sake of steel-manning your argument, that they were telling the truth, and that they really believed it, and that there was no deception involved, and that they were honestly writing down what they overheard, and what they thought they witnessed, etc., etc. I'm granting all of that, and we're still no closer to the veracity of your claims. Give me a break. Give me a bloody break. Let's move on.
Now, even if the New Testament never existed, Christianity would still be true. Why?
I get the feeling that he knew what I was going to say, and that's why he put in that little protection for himself. Now, even if my previous argument was BS, I've got another one for you. This is what's known as the Gish Gallop, guys. This is when somebody fires so many arguments at you, they hope that you can't actually dismantle them all. And then they can always point to the one that you missed out and say, see, you didn't debunk all of the stuff I said, and so therefore God is real. Frank Gish Gallop Turek, in his prime, still going strong. Get out of here, Frank. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Take it away.
Even if the New Testament never existed, Christianity would still be true. Why? Because Christianity is based on an event, the resurrection. Do you realize there were thousands of Christians before a line in the New Testament was ever written? Why? Because an event occurred, the resurrection. You have to have more faith to believe it didn't occur than it did. And if God exists, and he does, and can create the universe out of nothing, then he can certainly resurrect Jesus from the dead. That's why we believe in Christianity.
Did you catch that? Did you actually hear him say that? I have to have more faith to not believe the resurrection happened than what somebody requires in order to believe that it did. He just said that, and then the video ended. What? That's it. The video is over. There's no more. The video ended. You know what? I'm going to adopt Frank's style here. I'm not going to address that argument. Let's just end my video right here. I'm going to end the video right here, guys. Why not? Screw it. I'm ending it right here. Thanks, Frank. Thanks for that assertion. Well, in my opinion, you are full of it. Before this video wraps up, it's time for me to answer a Patreon question. Take it away, Dara. So before we wrap up here in this video, I want to answer a Patreon submitted question. And if you, dear listener, want to submit a question like this Patreon has, you can jump into the description below and click on my Patreon link. If you go there, you'll find a whole bunch of tiers where you can sign up and become a patron. And that will, depending on which tier you choose, entitle you to submit monthly questions, which I will answer in a video just like this one. This question is submitted by Callum Bursher. Callum is a great supporter of mine. Callum has been supporting me for a very, very long time. You'll frequently see Callum in the comments below. And Callum, can I just say, from one human to another, thank you so much for your kindness, your generosity, and your continued support. But in any case, Callum submits the following question. If you were sent to live on a desert island for a year completely alone, what 3 luxury items would you want to take with you? And Callum clarifies here that food and water is in fact included on the island, so I don't need to worry about my survival in that sense. I will be fed, I will be watered, there'll be no problem with survival. Assume all your normal amenities are there. What 3 luxury items would you bring with you to the island? I love these kinds of questions, and I hope my answer isn't a crap one, but this is honestly my answer. I would bring a 4K TV, probably the one I currently own, a 65-inch Samsung 4K TV with full array local dimming and a high refresh rate. That's the first thing, assuming there's electricity. I mean, he says assume the normal amenities are there, so I can just plug in the TV, right? So I would bring a TV, that TV specifically. I would bring my PlayStation 5, not just because of the games, but because it's also a 4K Blu-ray player and I love my movies. So I would bring those 2, and I would also bring my laptop. Assuming one of the amenities that's available on the island is internet, I would also bring my laptop. It would be those 3 things. You see, guys, I'm an absolute movie fanatic. I watch films every single day. I watch 4K movies all of the time, and as you've seen on my channel, I've even done movie reviews with guest appearances from PJ of the channel. Just the tip, we reviewed all 4 of the Matrix movies, or I should say all 3 Matrix movies. There isn't a 4th one, I don't think. Certainly not one I'm willing to acknowledge the existence of. But in any case, I love films, so I also love video games. Now, perhaps Callum would want to stipulate here that I can't bring any 4K movies with me, or that I can't bring any games with me, because those would count as additional luxury items. But I think I've got a cheat code for that. What if the games are pre-installed on the PlayStation? Is that okay? What if the movies are pre-installed on the PlayStation's hard drive? Is that okay? I think that works, doesn't it? Because I'm technically not bringing an extra item if they're already on the hard drive of the PlayStation. So I still get my movies, I still get my games, I still get my TV, and then my laptop, of course, for just mindless scrolling of the internet and research and watching YouTube, which is how I spend much of my remaining time. I could even do some editing and video making, although I wouldn't have the camera. Although the laptop would have a camera in it. Cool, yeah. So I could make some videos, although I don't know who'd be watching them because I would be stuck on a desert island. In any case, Callum, I hope that answers your question. I hope you enjoyed the answer. I really do appreciate you submitting the question. I look forward to hearing your next question, my friend. And as I say, guys, if you would like to submit a question like Callum did, you can become a patron by clicking the link in the description below. But with all that said, let's move on. Thanks again, Callum. You're the best. Guys, thank you very much for watching this episode of The Most Annoying Religious People. Do you agree with my critique? If so, jump into the comments below and tell me why you agree, or if you disagree, tell me why also. Maybe you actually agree with me, but you feel I could have done a better job of critiquing one of his positions. And very frequently, people point out in the comments below little bits and pieces and tidbits that I missed. And I love when you guys tell me those things, because I want to fill in the knowledge gaps in my own thinking as well. So please do inform me below if there's anything I missed. And obviously, if you disagree, explain why, and we can hash it out in the comments below. As I've said before in many, many videos, the conversation often continues for weeks in the comment thread below each video, and that really is the lifeblood of this channel. I love it, and I have to say it's such an enjoyable thing, and I learn a lot in the comments as well, so I look forward to continuing the conversation below. If this is your first time visiting the channel, hit the subscribe button, and while you're at it, don't forget to check the bell notification icon, and that way you'll be able to stay up to date with all things on the channel, and you'll even be notified as and when my latest videos go live. Just before we wrap up, I want to extend in an extra special thank you to my patrons, who are really and truly the lifeblood of this channel. Thank you very much, guys. And if you want to become a patron, as I mentioned earlier in the video, jump into the comments below. Or not the comments, rather, jump into the description below and you'll find the link right there. So guys, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. All the best. Bye-bye.